Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump says America will finish the job in Iran. He made his message clear last night in his first address to the nation on the war.
The president said the United States has already achieved many of its key objectives and will hit Iran even harder in the days ahead. Gary Lane has the story.
It's been a month since Operation Epic Fury kicked off. And President Trump just stepped up to the White House podium with a clear message. This war isn't over yet.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
He repeated his warning to Iran. Open up the Strait of Hormuz for oil and gas shipping or face U.S. airstrikes that could wipe out the country's power plants. Trump also called on America's allies, especially those who rely on Iranian oil, to help keep the oil flowing through the strait.
Go to the strait and just take it, protect it, use it for yourselves. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy.
Across the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's neighbor, the United Arab Emirates, says it might join a coalition to help police the oil-rich region. Oil and gas prices have skyrocketed since the war began. Brent crude reached a high of nearly $120 a barrel in early March. It's now hovering around $100 a barrel. Here at home, gas prices have climbed to over $4 a gallon, the highest in 4 years.
This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict.
The president promises prices will drop once the fighting stops. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer responded to the president's speech, saying, quote, "In a rambling, disjointed speech, an unhinged president failed to justify his disastrous decision to go to war with Iran." But ABC News military analyst Colonel Steve Gonyard says the president didn't tackle the biggest question on everyone's mind.
They talked about we've taken care of the Army, the Navy, we've taken care of the missile production, and we've taken care of, at least notionally, their ability to hit Israel and the United States. But the nuclear problem has got that quiet check mark, and it was not addressed.
Trump still has to figure out how to secure and get rid of 460 kilograms of enriched uranium sitting in Iran. Will it take a risky special forces mission? Are we talking boots on the ground? First, someone has to actually find it before anything else can happen. The president might want to settle things at the negotiating table, but Iran's foreign minister won't even admit they're talking. And news reports say U.S. intelligence doesn't believe Iran is serious about talks to end the war. For now, Trump's message Wednesday night was loud and clear. This war ends when he says so. Until then, the U.S. plans to hit Iran even harder in the days ahead. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Well, our chief White House correspondent, Kelly Wright, is with us now from Washington. So, Kelly, the president says he'll keep up the military strikes. Does the administration believe they can wrap this up in Iran in 2 to 3 weeks?
Gordon, we have to go to what the president has said already last night, that it would take 2 to 3 weeks to complete the job. He is proud of the military and making its accomplishments and decimating the Iranian regime. He wants to see an end to this so that he can return to the domestic agenda at hand. So based on what the president said, the United States can achieve this within 2 to 3 weeks.
Trump is very unhappy about the lack of support from NATO, and he's talking about pulling out of it. I don't understand him doing that, but does it look like he'll go ahead with that plan?
At the moment, one can arguably say that he is absolutely considering that plan, but the question is, will he follow through with it? He is just exasperated and frustrated with NATO and with the EU, and he's also going to be meeting with Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, sometime next week. Now, that was already in the planning, but obviously with this war, he's actually going to be talking to him about what NATO has done, or the lack thereof, to aid the United States and Israel in this war against Iran, to remove a nuclear threat that was a threat not only to Israel and the United States, but to the entire world.
Well, let's talk about the threat, and that is the nuclear threat. That wasn't part of the speech last night, and it's a noted omission. So both in terms of that threat and then what I've been saying now for a long time is the regime itself is the threat. that kind of ideology in charge of that much money, that they don't really view themselves as the government of Iran. They view themselves as the future government of an Islamic state that covers the world. So is that part of the mission? And if so, why was that left out?
There are a lot of things that this administration has to consider, to your point. And I asked this question of Caroline Leavitt 2 weeks ago during a White House briefing. And I talked about the very thing that you've discussed, the ideological and spiritual aspects or thinking of this Iranian regime, which wants to control the world with an Islamic caliphate. Now, the president is aware of that, what's going on the inside in terms of his national security and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and how they view this problem. Is something that we still have to wait and see how he will deal with a new regime. The regime change has already taken place. He stated that as much. But going forward, who will he actually have to deal with in order to see a new Iran rise up that will no longer pose a nuclear threat to the United States, the world, and Israel, and no longer state death to Israel and death to America? This is something that he has to contend with, because it is a reality that if he continues to deal with these different ideological, spiritual aspects of the Iranian regime, the remnants of that, he may be seeing that he'll have to go back to Iran to deal with that, the remnants of the regime, rather than giving freedom to the Iranian people with a new government and their freedom to pursue their own government. And many Iranians that I've spoken to said that he has started this, he has to finish it, and get rid of dealing with any remnants of the Iranian regime, but deal with Iranian people who truly want to embrace some form of democracy.
All right. Well, our chief White House correspondent, Kelly Wright, thank you for joining with us. Let's turn now to our CBN senior international correspondent, George Thomas, who's with us from northern Iraq. So, George, you know the people of Iran. Will they settle for anything less than regime change?
No, absolutely not. And whoever the president is talking to right now, we're not quite sure. There's a bunch of rumors from the head of the parliament in Iran. A number of folks names have been floated out. But look, a number of these folks are still have been tethered to this regime for a very, very, very long time. And today, Gordon, this is day 34, where there is a complete internet blackout. There is no cell communication, no internet. I was talking to somebody who just escaped from Iran this morning, and she has been in no communication whatsoever with her loved ones for 34 days. And the uncertainty of what really is going on inside the country is absolutely frightening to this person that I spoke to.
Well, we've got a new travel warning today for Americans still in Iraq. There was a correspondent who was kidnapped. What can you tell us about that?
In light of her kidnapping, this is Shelley Kittleson. She worked as a freelance journalist, American, kidnapped off the streets of Baghdad. And the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad released a statement just a few hours ago saying that all Americans that are still in the country need to leave. Why? Because in the next 24 to 48 hours, the pro-Iranian militia in the region, operating about an hour and a half from my position, is expected. The expectation is that they are going to launch attacks in the central part of the country. And I got some calls from various of our officials in the security apparatus of the United States, urging myself and others in the region to get out. But look, this is the challenge that Iraq today is facing. I'm just going to grab an umbrella here. It's beginning to rain, so bear with me a second. But this is the challenge that the Iraqis today, and especially those in the Kurdistan region of northern Iraq, are dealing with. Look, the Kurds find themselves in an unusual position, unlike any of the other countries that have been hit by the Iranians. The Kurds are being hit by the Iranians, but they're also being hit by the Americans. Why? Because of these huge numbers of pro-Iranian militia groups that operate today, really under the cover of the Iraqi government. Gordon, you know, they are tethered to the Iranian regime, and they don't want anything to happen to the regime. They want them to maintain and to stay in control, and that's why these pro-Iranian regimes have been really just in the last 3-4 days, relentless attacks against the Kurdistan region of Iraq. In fact, just yesterday, 50 drones. Fortunately, they were intercepted. Some did manage to hit civilian targets, as well as a British-owned oil refinery company not too far from my position. So the Iraqis, especially those in northern Kurdistan, are feeling the brunt of this war that the U.S. has waged, as well as with Israel, against Iran.
Do you think Iraq is actually going to stay as a nation state, or is it going to fracture into different regions?
Yeah, fantastic question. It's also a concern, a huge concern for those up here in the northern part of the country. Big concern, because as this war prolongs, right? And I mean, clearly, just as Kelly was mentioning and what the president said last night, Gordon, I mean, we cannot dismiss the kind of military obliteration that the Iranian regime has experienced at the hands of the Americans and the Israelis. Their navy is basically defunct. They have no, their drone capacities significantly diminished. Their intermediate to long-range ballistic missiles continue to be degraded. So as they, near potential death as a regime, you know that these other groups in the region, especially those groups that are based here where I am today in Iraq, will potentially retaliate. And then the government has to find a way to, if they can and if they want to, rein these groups in. The United States just yesterday pummeled one of the major pro-Iranian militia groups in the Mosul Nineveh plains, hitting multiple targets yesterday. And that's why the U.S. Embassy released this alert to Americans. It's a threat level number 4, which is the highest, basically saying they're anticipating potential retaliatory attacks against American interests, military bases, American targets as well, American citizens. And so that's the concern. And then overall, the whole idea is that Iraq, will it maintain its territorial integrity in the midst of this war that's being waged against the Iranian regime?
Well, George, please stay safe, and our prayers are with you. You're in the middle of that war zone, and thank you so much for the report. But please, stay safe.
Will do. Thanks, buddy.
All right.